Let's jump into our preseason top 25. As we said, we have done a ton of work, and it's going to look a little weird. Teams are, this isn't 2023, so we're judging these teams based off of what we've learned here for going into the 2024 season. I know I can already tell you what one of the comments is going to be. Mason is going to be. Why isn't Michigan number one? They went undefeated and they won the national championship and they haven't lost a game yet.
Oh,
So
good grief.
they should be number one. I can already tell you that's going to be the case. And we don't abide in that around here. We didn't do that for Georgia whenever Georgia was actually we
No.
probably did, but Georgia was preseason ranked really high anyway.
Not in
Michigan,
22 though. Not in 22 though.
no,
Georgia
no,
Georgia was not our preseason number 1, in
right, right.
22.
Um, so anyway, it's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this stuff, and let's see what we got, man. Let's go through 25 through 21. We'll work our way to number one. 25, we got the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and this was one of the teams that we did a breakdown on, and a lot of changing this went on in Nebraska, man. But again, in a sense, there's a lot of the same. A lot of the guys that are coming back. You've got a new quarterback there in Dylan Raiola, and we feel like Nebraska is a team that is trending in the right direction. Oklahoma moving to the SEC, going to be a challenge for this team. Much has been made about the lines of scrimmage for Oklahoma. What is that going to look like this year going into a line of scrimmage league that is the SEC, no doubt. And admittedly, guys, we have two people here at First and Long College Football Show, so we don't agree on every little thing. Although me and Mason, we come pretty damn close sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't agree on everything. And Mason's a little higher on Oklahoma than I am, and we've got him in that 24 spot, and I think that there is potential for them to move into a better spot than that. 23, you got Auburn, a team that we definitely feel like is on the rise. It's going to be kind of a slow burn with those guys, but definitely a team that we feel like is trending in the right direction. Wisconsin, you could say the same about them, picking up Tyler Van Dyke this year. Tyler Van Dyke, I didn't realize. I was listening to Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator there at Wisconsin the other day. He was hurt all year last year. The kid was hurt. He played hurt like the whole time. And he is healthy and he's in an air raid system. I think this system is really going to fit Tyler Van Dyke, and Luke Fickell has really got it going on just to begin with. So that's a man that I feel like's got his ducks in a row, and I think he's going to have the Badgers, looking a lot better this year in the top 25. That's a step in the right direction. And then number 21 is going to be one that a lot of people disagree with us, Mason. It's Florida State. And, we're going to talk about conference championship odds here shortly, but they're the conference favorite. Vegas is favorite to win that ACC conference. And, spoiler alert, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. So, and I don't believe that Mason does either. So we've got them in the 21 slot, and actually had to kind of bump them up. This is not a team that has been on our forefront of our mind in the ACC necessarily. I'm thinking this is probably the third or fourth best team in the ACC right now. What do you think about these five right here, Mason?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously tend to agree with you on most everything. Looking at Nebraska, I think they've got a few weapons on the outside, and I'm anxious to see what Dylan Raiola is able to do with those weapons. And I mean, I would note that defense that comes back that was deadly last year. Couple that with better quarterback play, which I think you're going to get out of a true freshman in Dylan Raiola. In comparison to Jeff Sims, who was just a fumble monster, like that's all he did last season. I think it's going to be pretty easy to see an uptick in quarterback play, and that should result in more wins for Nebraska. Oklahoma is, look, Oklahoma's been handed a tough schedule. Now we didn't make this ranking based on how we think the season's going to go. This is based on the rosters that we have now, knowing what we know now, knowing the health of the rosters and where these teams are at. It's based on the now. Oklahoma could certainly play itself into a top 10, sort of ranking with this schedule. I mean, they've got an opportunity to really win some big ball games. I think they're still about a year away, but I'm really excited to see Jackson Arnold and what he's able to do for that offense. Looking at Auburn, like you said, they're a team on the rise. It might be a slow burn. I do think that they're going to be pretty elite in 2025, but I'm anxious to see how they work in these young receivers here in 2024. Cam Coleman should be pretty special. Definitely excited to watch what he's able to do. And I think that they have some questions at secondary, but bring in a lot of talent on the defensive line. We'll have to see how they're able to work in as well. And looking at Wisconsin, I mean, we know the defense that they have. We know the physicality on the lines of scrimmage. We know Luke Fickell is bringing in, a whole new offensive system. Excited to see what Tyler Van Dyke is able to do here. But, I think that Wisconsin right now is kind of an upper tier Big Ten team or a middle to upper tier, and they're going to be playing upset, for most of the season, and it should be fun to watch because they're capable. They've got some dudes that can that can win them some ball games, I think. And looking at Florida State, I mean, I know we're going to get some flack for Florida State from Florida State fans and for them being so low, but I'm just looking at everything that they lost. You look at the game last year in the bowl game against Georgia. That was the team that is playing this year, pretty much, minus DJU. And whoever else they got in the transfer portal, about 8 players, right, that we figure are going to play pretty significantly. There's not that much of a difference to make up. It's not. There's not a 60-point difference. And look, we're saying 21. We're not saying number 1 team in the country, but I do think that they have a pretty long way to go to be relevant in the ACC this year. There's a few at least ACC teams ahead of them that we have higher. We'll get to them in a minute and explain that, but yeah, pretty low on FSU for now.
Yeah, man, I'm just not there with this team, and I need to see more from DJU. And speaking on Wisconsin, we're gonna know a lot about Wisconsin very early when Alabama takes their trip to Wisconsin. Um, we're gonna know very very early in the season. I think that's the second or third week, Mason. So really really good football game early in the season there. 20 through 16. Let's jump through this. Look, we got LSU at 20. I think it's going to be a good offense. I don't think it's going to be a great one. I think there's some really good wide receivers at LSU, right? What go figure, right? What water wet, fire hot. LSU wide receivers are good. That's kind of been a trend for a little while now. Um, but this defense it's not an overnight rebuild. And Blake Baker, I don't care if he's Jesus Christ. He's not touching these defenders and putting putting the defender back into him. Okay, this is going to take a while. It's going to take some hardcore recruiting on the defensive side of the ball, specifically in the secondary for this LSU team. A team that used to be DBU is not so much that anymore. LSU, while they will have a dangerous offense, I think their defense is going to be kind of their Achilles heel this year. Number 19, you got Louisville. I probably said that wrong, Mason. We've been corrected 92 times. Louisville, Louisville. I said it one of those times, so there you go. I just believe in Brom, and I believe that this offense is going to be able to do what it does under a Brom coach team, and I like the defense. I feel like the defense is in a good spot as well. So it really the questions are kind of on offense for this team, and then you've got a coach like Brom. It makes me not worry about those questions quite as much. I think he's going to be able to get it figured out. So Louisville is a team that played in the ACC championship last year. I don't have them predicted to do that this year, but I think it will be a decent team either way. Clemson, look, this is simple. You lost a lot of talent on defense. You got a lot of young guys coming in working on that defense. Lost some pretty key secondary players, right? And beyond all that, I'm just not a Cade Klubnik guy. That's just I got to see it before I'm going to be able to believe it at this point. I don't think Cade Klubnik is the quarterback that's going to take Clemson to where they need to go. And that's just where I'm at on that. University of Kentucky. This is a team that's going to surprise people this year. Mark Stoops is a coach that knows how to do more with less. And, whenever I say less, I mean, I I don't know. I need to really kind of mince my words there because this team's got some talent, Mason. They've got wide receivers. They've got a quarterback that was highly sought after that transferred out of University of Georgia, and not because he sucked or something, because he's at the University of Georgia, and there's a long line of dudes waiting to play quarterback there. He's made his way over to Kentucky. We all know what the lines of scrimmage are like in Kentucky. It's a hard-nosed football team. Some would call him Georgia Junior, and there's a reason for that. It's one of Georgia's least favorite teams to play every year just because of that physicality. And this year, I believe they have a little bit of finesse to go with the physicality. So give me Kentucky at 17 all day. I think they're going to really surprise some people. In talking about surprising people, nobody's talking about NC State, Mason, and they damn sure should be. We're going to know a lot. A lot of people are going to watch NC State probably. I think it's the second or third week of the year. They're going to be they're hosting Tennessee, right, Mason? Pretty sure that NC State will be hosting Tennessee in that game. But they are playing.
It's a neutral site. Neutral site.
That's right.
It's in Charlotte.
It's in Charlotte. That's right. Jay was my buddy. I just told you my buddy's name on air here, but my buddy Jay was actually telling me that this weekend. Look, NC State's got a way more solid roster than what you think they do. We're going to talk more about them here in just a few minutes. I'm going to be doing my conference championship predictions, and not to spoil anything, but I may have NC State in there. What do you think about this group, Mason?
Well, I mean, starting with LSU, I think we really need to see a difference on defense. I feel really good about their offense. Not going to be quite what they were last season, but I feel confident in Nussmeier. I'm on the Nuss bus, as they say, and I think that they've still got talent at wide receiver. Anxious to see what the running backs do behind an outstanding offensive line. I mean, this is going to be a Joe Moore Award finalist. I'm quite confident in an offensive line, and but yeah, I'm not ready to bump them up until I see what they can do on defense. Haven't seen it in a while. Haven't seen a good defense from LSU in a while, and they're due. But moving on to Louisville, I do think, like you said, they were a good team last year. I think that they're a better team this year, but they're mixed in with really, really tough ACC opponents. I think NC State took a huge step this past year. I do think Clemson had a small bump this past year, but enough to move them past Louisville. Speaking of Clemson, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, I've got questions at quarterback still. You lose Will Shipley, who is dynamic. You do have Maffa there, but I'm anxious to see if Maffa is able to handle the workload. Because I mean he's a big back and all, but he can't be carrying the ball 20 times a game and in this new season and format. I'm anxious to see what he's able to do. That coupled with some lackluster offensive line play. They lost Bo Collins on the end. Supposedly their wide receivers are better this year, but we'll have to wait and see on that. And then on defense, I mean, I know they lost some pieces, but I trust the defense. They bring in some new pieces as well. Sammy Brown's going to be phenomenal at linebacker, so I'm not too concerned about the defense, but just on the back end, I think that's the only place I have questions for Clemson there. Going on to number 17, Kentucky coming in. I'll echo what you noted there with the quarterback coming in. Drawing a blank here now, but
Brock Vandagriff.
With Vandagriff coming in, thank you, and some key pieces at receiver as well. I think he's got a few weapons to work with, and Kentucky's going to be physical, man. They're going to be physical up front. Really love their defensive line. I think they're a highly underrated defensive line, and they're gonna upset some people this year. I think that they're going to have a pretty good year under Mark Stoops. And then NC State. I mean, it sounds like you got them in your ACC conference matchup. I might have them in there as well. I think that they're an upper tier ACC team this year and could creep their way up into the top 15 early on in the season.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I'm high on NC State. Not enough people talking about them, and we need to give Dave Doran his due. He's done a really good job there in Raleigh, and I think they're going to find their way over from Raleigh over to Charlotte for the championship game. Let's talk about this group. Number 15, Kansas State. your quarterback leaves, or should I say, you push your starting quarterback out, and you want the young guy coming in, right? You got the curly headed fast guy in there. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. I've heard mixed reviews, Mason. I've heard mixed reviews on this guy. We'll see how this all works out. I've been communicating with our Kansas State fans in the comment section, and there was one person that kind of used a hockey analogy to describe the defensive line for this Kansas State. He said it's going to be like a whole line change, a hockey line change at defensive line. And he said so, a lot of work to be done, a lot of questions that need to be answered. It sounds like from his perspective, and I'm gonna take their fans at their word, and I'm gonna take them at their word. Look, I still like Kansas State. Um, I don't know that they're my favorite to win the Big 12 or anything like that, but um, I think that's why these coaches decided they wanted to go with the younger quarterback. It's they're going younger. They're building for another year, Mason. I feel like so. Whereas they should compete some this year in the Big 12, I think really the goal is kind of next year and beyond for this Kansas State team as far as the maybe college football playoff goals go. Number 14, Texas A&M. This team is an enigma, guys. We don't really know what's going to happen here. This could go really well. And I think most people are predicting that it is going to go well. How well can it go? We have them on in the 14th spot here, and it's going to come. Me and Mason have talked about it time and time again over this offseason. Texas A&M's season is going to come down to the last game, just like Texas's season is going to come down to the last game, and they're going to play each other at Kyle Field. I have a feeling both of these teams will have 2 losses at that point, and the team that wins the game is going to go to the college football playoff. I think it's simple as that. I like Connor Wegman. We're going to talk about him a little bit whenever we do the Heisman stuff. He's not my prediction or anything, but he does have, he's middle of the pack. He's a plus 2,000 odds to win the Heisman. This guy is a good quarterback. We just haven't seen enough of him due to injuries. Michigan at number 13. This is it could go a couple different ways, I feel like, for Michigan this year, but this is going to be one of the best defenses in the country. They're going to be in every game. That defense is going to hold them in every single game. If they can figure out a way to, utilize Jack Tuttle and Alex Orji at the quarterback position the right way, whatever that is, running with Alex Orji, or using Jack Tuttle in the play action and have him kind of run the offense. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. I've major questions on the offense, but Michigan is built to be able to handle those types of questions. Like on the offensive line, I believe that Michigan is going to be able to replenish those guys, and I think they're going to be a decent team this year. I'm not sure that they're a playoff team, but it's hard to predict at this time of the year, so we'll see what happens. And then Penn State at number 12. I think Drew Aller's going to get better. I don't think Drew Aller is as bad as what people think he is. I know he gets a lot of flack, but I think he was, not in a great system. He wasn't in a system that's allowing him to air the ball out down the field. That's what this team is missing at this point. Unfortunately for this team, I don't think they have a lot of those answers. And answers, I mean wide receivers. So I think it's going to be more of the same from Penn State this year. I think you're going to have that ground attack going. You got 2 really good running backs, a good offensive line, a good tight end. I think they're going to run the ball successfully again this year, and I think they might just be able to do it right into the college football playoff this year. So, and then Mizzou just brings a lot of guys back on offense, and I think that's the attraction with Mizzou. Brady Cook is a guy that he's plus 3,000 odds to win the Heisman Trophy. You've got Luther Burden, who is certainly going to be, if he already isn't a name in your household that he will be. He's going to be a household name. Luther Burden is the real deal. And not to mention, you've got Theo Weiss and company over there. If Mizzou can answer their questions at running back, with transfer Brandon Carroll from Georgia State and Nate Noel coming over from App State, then I think they're going to be really, really good on offense. And I think C+ to B grade on defense. What do you think about this group? And all those all those breakdowns are paying off. I know a lot about all these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna go too deep on these. I know we're running a little bit long here, but
Yeah.
Kansas State is a team that I'm high on. I'll say that. I've got them ahead of Utah personally, as in a preseason format, but I do think that I do trust in Avery Johnson. I think that he is going to be the real deal. I'm with you on Texas A&M. This could be the rising star of the SEC, right? I think that's the way I look at Texas A&M. They got tons of talent. Finally got a good coach in there, which we thought for a while they had a good one in Jimbo Fisher, and that turned out to be not true. So, but moving on to Michigan, coming off of a little bit of a hangover from the national championship, I do really like the defense still. I think they've got a really solid defense. I think they're going to reload on offensive line. Not sure about the pass catching weapons. Great tight end and Colston Loveland, but I think that if they can figure some things out on offense, we're talking about a fringe playoff team, a team similar to Penn State, but I guess really they're about identical. It's a shame we don't get to see these two teams face this year in the regular season at least. But Penn
Yeah.
State also really good on defense, right? I trust their run game. A little bit more experience on the offensive line, but where are the receivers at? I don't know. But that's going to be the big question mark for me. Can they get vertical and down the field? We'll have to wait and see. And then Mizzou, they got pass catchers. I think that they've got some they could spare for Penn State, one for Penn State and one for Michigan at least. Yeah, they're really a fun team to watch. They were great last year and had a great run game last year with Cody Schrader, and were still really fun to watch. Kind of a really well balanced team. I'm anxious to see how the running back depth looks this year with Robert Lewis coming over from Georgia State. They bring in a running back from App State as well, but not a ton of depth there. So I'm anxious to see with a longer season if they're able to stay healthy. I think that's a big question mark for a lot of teams this year, but really like Missouri, and also they did bring in a few weapons on defense as well. So anxious to see what they're able to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Mizzou is a lot better than people think. Everybody thinks that Mizzou had a flash in the pan last year, and it's just going to fizzle out real quick. But I'm not so sure, guys. I'm not so sure. I think Mizzou is here to stay for at least one more year. Um, Number 10, Utah. This is one of my picks for the Big 12 championship game. Look, it comes down to a couple things really for me. Kyle Whittingham, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
I just love the coach, man. A hell of a football coach, one of the best football coaches in America. You can't convince me otherwise. This guy knows how to run a football team. You get Cam Rising back. That's another one for me. I saw Cam Rising come in the first drive of the spring game, take him right down the field and score a touchdown like he'd never stepped off the field.
Yeah.
Now, the knee, that was brutal. What happened with the knee? I'm hoping we're not seeing him taking off out of the pocket too much. But with that being said, that's probably going to hinder his game some. We'll see how he is as a pocket passer, or if he does scramble around, hopefully he's able to get out of bounds quickly. Or I don't even know how well he can run. It seemed like he was favoring that knee still just a little bit. Look, those injuries are mental, so he'll have some mental hurdles to jump over this season for sure. Getting back to 100%. Tennessee at number 9. It doesn't seem like that long ago that Tennessee, had like they weren't even going 500 every year, and now Tennessee is right back up here into our top 10, and they deserve it, Mason. Honestly, I'm a Georgia fan, but I try to be as balanced as I can. I love for Georgia to beat Tennessee when we play them, but I have to give Tennessee their props. They're fielding a defense at this point, and that's why they're in the top 10, y'all. It ain't got nothing to do with they don't have the best offense in the country. They have a really good offense. It is really good. It's not the best in the country. That's not why they're in the top 10. It's a combination of both. And if Tennessee start playing some really complimentary football, they're going to keep climbing up in all these rankings and all these top 25 polls. And if they start recruiting in the top 5 on a consistent basis, watch out, because Tennessee will be competing for national championships. As for right now, that you got a first year starter quarterback. I think that kind of hampers you a bit. He's going to have some learning curves. There's no doubt about it. You know, he's a young guy. Plus 1,400 in the Heisman odds. That you know, he's on everybody's radar already. So that should tell you the ability that he does have inside of him. It's just it hasn't come to fruition yet. We'll see it over the next few years. Miami, a team that I'm very high on. Mario Cristobal gets criticized for his game day decisions, but he does not get criticized for his personnel decisions. This guy knows how to put a team together. He knows how to recruit. He brought in Cam Ward through the transfer portal. You want to talk about somebody who's got some value on Heisman odds? 2,000 plus 2,000 Heisman odds. This guy has Heisman flair. 100%. It's very possible that he could be in New York for that, especially if Miami gets to where they want to go, guys. You know, we keep talking about Heisman because we're going to do a Heisman segment here in a little bit. But to win a Heisman, you got to be on a good team. You can't go 7-5 and win a Heisman. It's not going to happen. So Cam Ward is on a good team in Miami, and Miami is I feel like in the third year of Mario Cristobal being the head coach there, I feel like everything's kind of coming to fruition now. Alabama at number 7. I think you could argue that they could fall back a little farther than this. I think, you know, I think the ceiling this year for Alabama, the absolute ceiling, everything goes great, is 11-1. Like everything goes perfect. And I think the floor is like 8-4. You know, I think there's a lot of unknown for this team. Alabama is one of the most interesting teams to watch yet again in the country for 2024 with the new head coach, Kalen DeBoer. We'll see what Jalen Milroe has done in the offseason to further develop his talents. We'll just have to wait and see on that. Very, very interesting stuff. And then Notre Dame, Mason, is yet again a team that not a lot of people are talking about right now. But this is going to be the best Notre Dame team that we've had in a while. And, you know, as soon as Riley Leonard can be 100%, this will be the best quarterback they've had in a while. And we all know in college football, a really good playmaking quarterback can definitely lift your team up from, you know, a 9-3-ish team to an 11-1, or maybe even me and Mason are thinking maybe even a 12-0 season is very possible for Notre Dame this year. What do you think about 6 through 10 here? And we'll take it into the top 5.
Yeah, I mean Utah. I definitely agree with you. Kyle Whittingham's one of the best coaches in the country. I think that he's going to have this team ready to play this year. And you know, if Cam Rising goes down, you've got what is it, Brock Heward coming in behind him, and he's got some experience. So if you do have issues with Cam Rising, I think this year they're a little bit better prepared for injury than they were last season, and I think the defense is going to play just as well as they did last year as well. Tennessee coming in. Yeah, they're loaded on defense. I think that the biggest thing that, I want to kind of beat it into people's heads until they understand it, but Tennessee has got 3 sets of defensive linemen, right? It's so important with the way that their offense plays for them to have fresh legs on the defensive line. It allows them to do so much more. Excuse me. Because you know they play so fast on the offensive line. They're scoring fast and they're going 3 and out fast, right? That's kind of how Tennessee plays offense. So the defensive line's got to come in, you know, usually on short rest. And if you only have a handful of guys that can play D line, you're going to gas them out really quickly. Tennessee finally has the dudes in the stable to really play their style of offense and not have to play as much complementary defense. I think that's been an issue for them under Heupel so far. So I think that's why we have them so high. We believe in kind of the way that this team is designed. Miami, similarly, I mean, you talk about a defensive line. Miami might have the best D line in the country. They are deep. I mean, them and Tennessee both are pretty freaking stout right now. You know, couple Miami's defensive line additions with Cam Ward, with Martinez at running back. I mean, they're absolutely loaded. It's the best offensive line in the ACC. I mean, there's nothing not to like about Miami other than the fact that it's Miami. And we keep saying Miami is back. They're one of those teams that you keep saying they're back. and they haven't been yet. But I think this year they get over the hump, and Cristobal gets over the hump too, finally, in his head coaching career. I agree with you. I mean, Alabama could be lower on this list. You could have them higher on the list. I mean, we don't really know. I think that they've got a great head coach and they've got a great roster, but they're all new to each other. So I don't know if that's necessarily going to work out in Alabama's favor right away. I could see them going 9-3 this year. I think that's a really legitimate, win-loss record, and Alabama fans should be fine with that, even if they're out of the playoffs with that. I think it's fair to have them at 7 right now, just considering the roster talent that they have. But this is a team that I have sliding later on in the year, pretty early on. I guess they got Wisconsin week 3. We'll see. Georgia week 5. By then we'll know for sure what Alabama's up to. And then with Notre Dame, yeah, like you said, I've got them going undefeated this year. I think that that says more about their schedule than it does Notre Dame. Let me first of all say that week 1 against Texas A&M, we're gonna know. I think if Notre Dame wins that game against Texas A&M, they're going undefeated because the rest of their schedule is pretty light. They could always trip up somewhere else down the line, but I just think if they're good enough to beat Texas A&M, then they're going to be good enough to go undefeated the rest of the season. Of course, make the college football playoff.
Yeah. Yep. I think Notre Dame's pretty good, and we'll like you said, we're going to know week 1 just how good they are because they're going to have a test on their hands for sure. Number 5, the Texas Longhorns. Guys, if you haven't been paying attention, Texas has gotten some pretty bad news pretty recently about their running back room. They've had an injury, a season-ending injury there. Um, I'm not in love with this team's secondary at this point. They've got a lot of new pieces on the defense in general. The defensive line lost 2 first-round talents last year to the NFL that just absolutely changed the game for them. Absolutely made it to where Texas did not even have to think about anybody running the football. I mean, it was like that, right? That's not a luxury this year at all. This defense doesn't have any luxuries, Mason. They don't have any luxuries to rest their laurels on. And now they don't have a running game, it doesn't seem like. So it just seems like things are kind of falling apart a little bit for Texas here for the 2024 season. I'm not saying the team's going 7-5. I'm not saying that, but I think a 9-3 season is certainly in the cards for this team. And I think probably best case for this team right now is 10-2. I know that's not very popular to say. Well, I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. I know this team's got Quinn Ewers. Okay. I think he's kind of like a Jag plus, to be honest with you. So I don't think Quinn Ewers is as good as what people think he is. You can disagree with me if you want. I'd love to hear your argument on that. And we've never even seen him play a full season. So there's just a lot of things working against Texas. And let's jump to number 4, Ohio State. I think that's enough ragging on Texas. That should get a couple of mean comments. Number 4, Ohio State. We just broke down the Buckeyes the other day, and there's a lot of strengths to this team. They are one of the most talented teams in the country. Wide receiver room, probably second to none. I mean, as far as just raw talent goes, some of it undiscovered, but we're going to get to meet some of those guys this year as Marvin Harrison has moved on. But you bring in Will Howard at quarterback. I don't know how this is going to work out yet. You bring in Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator. I don't know how that's going to work out yet. So, there's a couple of different ways this can go down for Ohio State. But me personally, I feel like the offensive line is a liability at this point, particularly the right side of the offensive line. And I just don't think that's a place you want to be in whenever you're going to be a team that's going to rely on running the football, Mason. That's what they would like to do with these awesome running backs they've got, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. So we'll see how things work out for Ohio State. They've got that team out west that they've got to worry about now. They had the team up north they had to worry about. They still do. Now they got the team out west they got to worry about in Oregon. We'll get to them in a second. Ole Miss, everybody has talked about Ole Miss over and over and over and over. They did really well in the transfer portal. No doubt about it. But to get to where Ole Miss is trying to go and win an SEC championship, go to the college football playoff, and make a run in the college football playoff, you're going to need a lot of depth, and depth is a concern in some areas for this team. So, um, whereas I feel like all their starters for the most part are pretty damn good. Um, they're just not as deep as what you would like for a national championship contender. And I know we have them ranked number 3 here, so obviously they're really damn good, y'all. We feel like they're really really good. But when we get into this top 5, we're talking about the national championship, okay? And so I'm grading them on a pretty hard scale there. But I'm just feeling like there's a little bit of depth pieces that are missing there, and but overall a really really talented team, and I think Jackson Dart is going to do a really, really good job at quarterback this year running that offense. And we'll also kind of see what that running back room looks like as well, right? They kind of had some surprises there in the offseason with some guys leaving and things like that. So had a couple of questions to answer there as well. Oregon, I love this roster. That is all. Uh, the interior of the defensive line, there's I wish there was like one guy, one bad dude that I just know is like a first round talent. Maybe he's there and I don't know he's there yet. But guys, that's getting really nitpicky. I mean, beyond that, I feel like this team is pretty loaded. And only getting more loaded by the year as these recruiting classes come in. Are they as deep as the University of Georgia? No, but who is, Mason? I mean, we did our Georgia breakdown today. I'll just go ahead and take it into number 1. There is nobody got a better roster than Georgia. It just don't. And I know that's kind of objective or subjective, I guess. But uh, for my money, Georgia's got the best roster in the country, hands down. You got Carson Beck, who is tied for in a lot of places. I see here at FanDuel, he was second in Heisman odds at plus 750. You got plenty of options on this offense. The running back room is absolutely stacked. You got guys in there that people don't even know their name yet, and they're going to be a star. The offensive line is the best in the country. There's zero doubt about that to me. As long as they can stay healthy and the right tackle spot holds up with Xavier Truss, I think it's they're going to be really good come hell or high water. And then when you talk about linebacker, you're talking about Georgia. Mason, when we went through this, I mean, I'm a Georgia fan. I knew it was crazy, but it's unbelievable how stacked this linebacker room is. And I'm talking middle and outside, linebacker. It just as a whole, I mean, the NFL talent that's in that room is just, it's like an NFL room. It's just like a bunch of young NFL guys. It's really, really unbelievable. Can Georgia's defensive line take a step up and help them win a national championship? I think that'll be a big question for Georgia this year. I don't think it's a bad defensive line, but I'm wondering how dominant it can be. We're going to find out in 2024. But if it can be dominant, I think Georgia is going to be the team to beat for the national championship this year.
Yeah, and I mean every team's got its holes, and you kind of ran through them there. When you get to the top 5, you're looking for deficiencies. You're not necessarily looking for what makes a team great. You're looking for holes in their game and reasons to drop them down. I do think that Ohio State and Texas kind of slide throughout the season. I feel like Ohio State is probably going to get beat by Oregon. I think Oregon has a better, more complete roster. When I'm looking at Ohio State, I'm questioning 2 things mainly. It's going to be the offensive line. It's going to be the quarterback. Those are 2 very important position groups that they better hit on. And I have questions there. I mean, maybe they did hit on them, but I don't know that. So I think it's fair to question that at this time. Texas, similarly, I've got some concerns. I think they do have a good offensive line. I think they've got a good quarterback, but at running back now they're banged up, man. It's going to be tough for them to find a guy to hand the ball off to. With C.J. Baxter going down, it sounds like Christian Clark is banged up. I'm not sure if we're going to get to see him, and he was a true freshman, highly touted true freshman. Kind of came in with similar, with a similar renown, I guess, as C.J. Baxter did last year. So you're expecting him to come in and make a difference, and sounds like he's banged up. So not sure what's going to happen in the running game. I've continued to beat the drum on Texas's secondary being weak. I don't think that they're very good. I think that they added some pretty good pieces, but I think overall as a whole, that group is going to get tested quite a bit this year, and I don't think they're up for the challenge. Looking at Ole Miss, if I were to say that, if I were to look at any holes, which they're a pretty complete roster. I mean, they went in and added a ton of transfer portal players. I guess if I'm nitpicking, I'm looking at the secondary for the most part, at cornerback specifically. I'm wondering how those guys hold up. But outside of that, I'm wondering, this is kind of the experiment of college football. Ole Miss is the experiment of the new age, the transfer portal, and this is the team that could do it with pretty much all transfer portal players. Could win a national championship, that is, and kind of squash the old regime and the old paradigm of having to recruit all your players. Ole Miss is the first team that's really kind of taken that new stance and that new look of a team, and they're the first ones to have that opportunity to win a national championship with this roster. But that none of these guys have played together. Like, a lot of them are new, so I'm anxious to see how the offensive line gels, how the defensive secondary gels, how the team as a whole gels, and the morale of the team, and just the inner working, the culture, and all that. Just really anxious to see how this experiment unfolds. Going into number 2, you're looking at Oregon. I mean, you're absolutely right. They're completely loaded. They've got 2-3 defensive lines that they can roll in. I feel really good about the depth at all of these pieces. They've got 2 receivers really 3 receivers that could go over 1,000 yards this year. I don't think all of them do, but I think 2 of those 3 are probably going to really contend for another 1,000-yard receiving season for each of them, if that makes sense. But the only holes I'm looking at on Oregon's team is secondary. I mean, I'm looking at the safety position, and like you said, defensive line, interior defensive line depth. Those are the only 2 pieces I really see and question a little bit there. I think they're going to be really good on the offensive line. I think we noted the running back depth as well. That's another key point to make there on the offensive side of the football. But this is one of the best teams in college football. And going into who we think is the best team in college football, the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah, they're absolutely elite. They've got players up and down the field, 1 and 2 deep. But defensive line, I think, is an area where I look at and I wonder who's going to step up on the interior. You got Christian Miller, who could flash. He's playing behind Warren Brinson. Warren Brinson has played well, but probably lacks the first round talent. I don't think that's what we're seeing. So gone are the days of Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. Those interior first round talents. I don't think Georgia has that on their roster right now, and maybe. Yeah. Maybe they're coming up. Maybe it's a Jordan Hall who's coming into his sophomore year, but we haven't seen that, right? Outside of that, you've got some new pieces at secondary. So when you're sandwiching your middle linebackers with question marks, in different positions, it could put a lot of stress on that linebacking core, which I think is up for it. I think the middle linebacking core is outstanding. But I think if you're nitpicking, you're looking at the interior of the defensive line and one cornerback spot and 1 safety spot for Georgia, right? So 4 positions on defense. I think that they're pretty freaking elite on offense. There's not a first round draft pick at receiver, but they've got a really good group. They've got NFL guys at receiver too. So I don't think that that's going to be a concern for them. And yeah, but all of these teams could beat each other. I think at the end of the day, when you look at the top 5 group, I mean, all these teams have good strengths and some weaknesses. But to me, I think that we've got it ranked right. I think that based on roster and projection, a little bit of projection, I think that these are your top 5.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel pretty comfortable with where we landed, and look, anybody that you disagree. I mean, obviously, you're going to disagree about something. Nobody's going to have all the exact same top 25. So let us know in the comment section. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to know what you think of this. What who do you have number 1 through 5? I'd love to see that in the comment section. And if you're mad, that's all right. It's gonna work itself out, because you win ball games, you're gonna move right on up the list. And there's gonna be teams up in that top 5, Mason, that lose games they ain't supposed to lose. This is college football, so almost every team in the country is gonna lose a game they're not supposed to. So there'll be plenty of chances to move up and all that. Thank you all so much for watching. We're gonna go over our conference championship odds now, and then we're gonna give you our playoff odds and quickly go over our Heisman favorites and close out the show. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in.